Today we have audio engineer, sound designer, sound mixer, composer. He does all the things that involve sound. If you've been on the internet, you've probably heard him. It's Shawn Coleman.
Hi. Hey.
How is it going today?
Good, man. Good. Good to see you again.
I could try and describe what you do, but I'm always interested from my last job, like if you were at a dinner party, how would you describe your job?
Usually the bite size, I do sound for TV and commercials is the usually easy, dinner party, And so you don't get too deep into, the individual pursuits of it. But sound for TV and commercials is usually the move.
So to start off with, Shawn does the sound for Squidbillies. He does the sound design for it. Mm-hmm. But where I want to start is, how did you get involved in audio?
So as a kid, I played bass was my primary instrument as a kid, and played in rock and roll bands and weirdo cover bands and stuff like that in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is where I'm from, suburb Pittsburgh, Moon Township, Pennsylvania. I found University of Miami had a really amazing program, and it's still amazing now, but this was back in 1993 is when I went to school, for music technology, music engineering technology is what they call it, which was a mix between sound recording and like a minor in electrical engineering. And so it was somewhat academic, but also somewhat musical and stuff like that. I was the best rock bass player in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, but then you go to an amazing college full of musicians, and it was just bonkers. Like immediately I was like the worst, which was, and so there's two ways you can go when you walk into a situation like that. You quit, this sucks. Or you can, say, okay, wow, there's a lot to learn here and a lot of people to learn from. And so fortunately, I went that direction on the thing.
Can you give a context to what the music scene and what an audio engineer would have been back then?
We were coming out of analog tape at that time. So in fact, when I went to college, we had just gotten a computer that could record sound, and it was like, just did 2-track, and I think Pro Tools existed in an earlier incarnation prior to that, but it was obviously much more low-key than it is, than what you use it for now. And so we were still literally cutting tape and 24-track, the big 2-inch 24-track machines and recording on that thing. And it's good that I came up in that era because I got to do both. I actually, there's plenty of people that even 5 years after me came up that have never used a tape machine in their lives, and
I've been in a room when it's been used, but yeah.
So it was neat that I at least have that experience, and it helps you with theory and like signal flow and just truly understanding what's going on. Having the experience of doing that stuff. So I guess I expected to come out and do rock and roll records, like come out and be an engineer for Brendan O'Brien or whomever, and just and record rock and roll bands and stuff, but finding work, it's nice to have a 9-to-5 daytime version of a job in the recording industry, because so many of my friends, would go to New York or LA or whatever and sleep on the floor of a studio and sweep up and, like in 2 years I might get my own session, and I was like, man, I sort of want to have a house and stuff one day and be able to, make money. And so I came to Atlanta and fortunately got a job at Doppler Studios where we worked together. And ding. and was amazingly was able to get a job. I interviewed and they're like, sure, you're hired. And then after 18 years of working there, I was like, wow, that didn't happen very many times. You, me, 3 other dudes, in that 18-year span that just got hired, no problem,
Yeah, so what he's explaining is there's a constant fluctuation between interns that go through there, and it's not anything against the interns. Like, a lot of the people that go through there have a very good work ethic and things of that nature. It's just, that's the industry. I would say some of it's luck and timing.
Yeah, it was all luck and timing. Somebody had just left that was one of their, key engineers. I managed to hit right at the right time. It was unbelievably lucky, now in retrospect.
Yeah. I think the crazy thing about this field is that you don't realize that sound is 50% of everything that you're doing in the day. It's crazy. You're recording a lady for the voice of a toy that's at Toys R Us saying like, I love you. And then the next day you're recording like somebody, like the GPS system that's talking to you in your car.
Totally.
Yeah.
And how much it carries even work to picture. Even, there are some things that are just audio only, but we're working on a movie thing right now where the sound was, was okay. It wasn't bad, but it was, and frankly, the picture, I was like, the first time I watched the movie, I was like, man, this is not so great. And it's amazing how much you can polish it up and turn it into something that even it's the same exact picture, but just shaping the sound a certain way, and also shaping your, like, you can steer the eye a certain direction with panning or whatever, or focusing on a certain sound of something small that's happening over here. You know, like the eye is drawn to it, and you're enhancing the filmmaking experience just from sound, from a completely different sense. You know, so it's it's amazing how powerful it is.
And not only that, but you're steering the mood as well.
Totally.
Too. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of school, what are your thoughts on people that's getting a formal education, like a 4-year school or something like a Full Sail or something like that?
I think nowadays, either school is not going to get you a job guaranteed. Like, well,
you heard it here but it's true. I think there's some ground
for some years. Like when I graduated college in 1997, and there was some sense of, don't worry, when you get out, there are jobs waiting for you. There was some sense of that. I feel like in the last 10 years, every school worth their salt is like, there aren't jobs, bro. You know, thank you for coming here, but it's not like we're going to kick you out and you know, the job market's going to sweep you back up and you're going to be, you know, like, because there are less jobs now, man. You have to sort of create your own, find your own niche or whatever. And so I don't want to say don't go to school, but in fact, for my children, I'm like, man, college is not the requirement that it once was, you know, like where you have to have a college degree, especially in this type of thing. If you can find some niche thing that you can do just to learn how to do it, and then find a job where you're working for one person doing that thing or whatever, you know, get on with one rapper or whatever, where you're that dude's engineer, and now I've figured out some of this, you know, like this type of stuff. You don't need a college degree, and nobody has asked me, nobody's walked in here and said, let me see your credentials, bro. You know, not one time, so.
That's hilarious.
But that said, I learned a lot in college. First of all, I met amazing people, like I said, and just the experience of being around people in different work environments and taking a work-to-picture class that I might not have done if I was working with some rap dude that I didn't, you know, that I would never have the experience to do that. So you at least get to taste a lot of different things and meet different people and have a different experience that maybe somebody who didn't go to school would get. So you're getting something out of it, but it is absolutely not a requirement to get into this business.
Like, we could talk to each other about music theory and things like that. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't go to music college, or if I didn't have to go through the School of Music at Ball State. Then I still kind of know, like, all right, here's a compressor, here's an equalizer. But because of the degree, I could be like, oh, well, the theory behind these things is like, oh, there's a ratio there. This ratio is logarithmic because of this, and when you do overtones and all that whatever stuff, which also helps your problem solving in the long run. So I think a lot of it has to do with, you have to get your hands dirty with, in any way, shape, or form that you can utilize the thing that you want to pursue. Mm-hmm. So speaking of getting out of college and starting at Doppler, how did you get started with Squidbillies?
So Dave Willis and Jim Fortier are the creators of Squidbillies. Dave Willis was also one of the creators of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which is a classic sort of Adult Swim, one of the you know, total come up Adult Swim joints. He also worked on Space Coast Coast to Coast. He's like from the ground.
Even before that.
Yeah, totally. He's ground floor Adult Swim dude. And so they were doing a movie for Aqua Teen Hunger Force where they were coming in to record the voices for the movie. And so they were coming to Doppler Studio A to do those things. They had several sessions. And I was obviously younger at the time and totally, you know, was like, you know, that was the dream, is working on something that was fun like that. You know, after doing a number of dog food commercials and rando, you know, like audio things.
Your Toys R Us toys.
Yeah, I get it. You love me. Yeah. I talked to them in the hallway and was not overly pushy about it, but was clearly eager. And here's another timing thing. You know, I was like, hey, if there's ever anything you guys, you know, need me to work on, I'd love to get into that world. And now it's mixing in 5.1, you know, and I had never done that before. I'd only mixed in stereo before, but I was like, but I'll give it a go, and I was honest about it. I wasn't like, sure, I know everything about 5.1. I'm Mr. 5.1. I was like, well, I've never done it, but I'll learn it, and you know, I feel like I can pull it off. And the timing was right. They were starting on this show Squidbillies, which was just a funny word that somebody had come up with at Adult Swim, that they're like, we should make a show. That's a funny word, you know, and they had tried several iterations of the script to try to figure out how it was going to go and what direction it was, and they had made a pilot that was really, really great with another engineer who is a good engineer. I've never met the dude before, but he
sounded good.
Yeah, it was cool. I liked it, but I think he was less eager to detail things and to really bug out on it. He was older than me. He's probably how old I am now. So he was sort of probably in my checked out stage of like, whatever. No, I'm not checked out.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's one thing I can say about Shawn, or two things, it's very much that he's detail oriented. And not only that, but he is hands down the fastest editor I've ever met in my life.
Thank you.
You could come in here on any day and then you could just see smoke coming from his keyboard. He's the first guy that taught me, if you don't have to touch your mouse, don't touch your mouse. I don't know, you could sit there and like watch somebody do it and you're like, what did you even do? Like, I've been doing Pro Tools for some time, but like, how did you even know how to do that one thing?
I do. This thing's even crazier. So I'm on Fairlight now, which is a completely different software platform, although I'm still using Pro Tools for composition and stuff like that, but the main mixing thing is Fairlight, which is a whole nother head. It's totally, there's no mouse. There is a mouse, but you don't really mouse mix. It's a jog wheel, and it's just a completely different head and different mechanics to it. And I sucked out loud at it for the first, year and a half of being here. And I was like, God, I used to every day hear from people, wow, you're fast. Listen to you. Wow, listen to you, just tapping away at keys. Yeah. And now I'm just like the total thumb. Like trying to figure out how to do this stuff. But, but in time, but it was neat because I knew where I was going with the thing. You know what I mean? Like I knew what I wanted to get to and I just had to get there. And it's, it's the same. It's moving blobs of sound around. Nothing brand new to the thing, was just figuring out which buttons to press to move the blobs of sound around. So yeah, but now I'm fast again, thank God. It took me so long. I was like, God, I'm not fast anymore. What am I? Nothing.
I'm not an engineer.
Yes, sad.
So there was a pilot episode after for Squidbillies.
Yes. So they did the pilot and it sounded great, but the dude was, I think, less enthusiastic about detailing crazy amounts of stuff, and so they wanted to give me a shot, and so I started on episode 2. And I have done every one since then, and not every single one, but most since then. And we've done over 100 now, and it's been 13 years. Actually, it's fine. Yesterday was the 13-year anniversary of the first episode airing, of the pilot airing, I suppose. So which is bonker, 13 years of anything, and especially on that network where young and fresh and new is such a priority. I mean, it's, they're not making cartoons for 40-something-year-old dudes. They're making it for, 17 to 25, the demographic, the one that buys things that we want to sell, And so it's dope that the show is still on the air and that the network is still totally behind it, and they're like, man, it's still funny. We still like it, and
So walk me through from day one, if there's a script already, what happens?
So each individual voice is recorded separately. Sometimes you'll see like table reads of certain bigger shows, and or sometimes cartoons will all record everyone all in the same booth. We don't do it like that. We do one at a time voices. The writers will be here, and we will have one voice in the one voice in the booth or whatever, and they'll read the same line several times. They'll give them certain direction. We will go off and do some improvisational rando stuff or whatever, and so it's one. We'll just focus on one line at a time and go down. That's for each individual voice in the script. All those wild VO, they call that wild VO because it's not synced to picture. All of those will go to an editor over at Adult Swim who will chop it up and find their favorite reads of all the things, and will build the show out with all those reads and temporary sound effects. So if a door opens and early Kyler walks in or whatever the hell, they'll just throw any door opening sound effect in there and have him.
I just hear the AOL, like the it's just like very temporary sound effects.
Totally. Yes. And so I go back and replace all those things later on, but just so they can know for timing, for pacing, for animation and stuff like that. So an editor will chop all those up on their end. They will change it around for timing and get it to the best pacing that they can find it. And they call that a radio play because there's no picture. It's only you close your eyes and listen, and you envision the characters walking around and enough time for them to get from here to there and that type of thing. So then that goes off to animation, and animation takes, an eternity or whatever for them to do all the animation for the thing. And then it comes to me afterwards, and with those temp sound effects and the voices that they had slugged in, and then I polish it up, level out literally every single syllable, chop it up so every, like riding the volume of things, panning them around so when they walk around, they move in the space and stuff like that, adding ambiances as far as Birdie, Tweety, when they're outside, certainly any Foley, of them holding things, dropping things, this type of business, just all of the rando sound effects for whatever they're doing, mixed with music. And so, like I said, they dropped that off for me and let me do it. And I remember actually on the second episode, there was a train gag in the thing where you see it's a train track and one of the squids is sitting there, and then all of a sudden the train comes blasting through, and you know, it's a total like Looney Tunes style thing where you should have heard the train long ago, but all of a sudden, you know, it's already there. And so they were sort of explaining to me how that joke was going to work, and I'm like, well, yeah, I get it, you know, I see. And as soon as they saw that I got the, you know, the broader picture of things, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we don't need to note him to death on like, and when they walk in, I want to hear poof, 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 you know, like every single, you know, like when they cough, you know, like whatever. So they just leave me alone, man. They give me the stuff and let me go for usually, you know, 8 to 10 days of polishing it up, and then they come in, review, and fortunately at that point it's usually just like turn this up, turn this down, or sometimes if it's a big crazy machine wild thing, they're like, okay, I wish it was more grindy or whatever, this type of thing.
Add more grind sound effects.
That's audio though. There's so many of those weird, you know, like there's classic jokes of more purple, you know, stuff like that. And you have to interpret what that means. And that's part of this gig is, you know, there's a weird psychology to this gig because many people, certainly with talking about music, they don't know how to talk about music. They don't, you know, they didn't go to school, and I'm not going to like, I went to music school, you better use the proper, you know, like...
Well, what's the timbre of the trash can that you're...
Yeah, right, it's bright as a dark... Yeah, and so, yeah, figuring out what it is people want and turning that into a thing that they can be at the end, like, yes, that was what I intended, is the fun part of the gig, I think.
Do you have a stockpile of just squid sounds?
Yeah, actually, and they're real squids. And that was...
I didn't know that.
That's a real thing, man. And now that's the one thing I missed, because for the pilot episode, they went to the farmer's market and bought a legit squid and did the total Foley, you know, like smashed it and massaged it and everything and recorded it. And I have those sounds, and I've chopped them up, and now I have them all edited and EQ'd nice. So, and it's uncanny for any squid movement that they make. I know exactly where to go in that bank of sounds to find, you know, a fast arm move, a slow arm move, a slow get up, hit the ground. I have 5 different hit the grounds, and you know, and yeah, so they're actual squids on that, yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And it's everything still recorded from that pilot episode.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that
totally.
From there on out, you've still been using the same
and it's
sound
uncanny.
effect.
You know, X episodes later, I'm always thinking they're going to make some move that I don't have that I got to build out of something else, and I can always build it out of this. I don't know how they did such a good job of that, but they did. You know,
You've never been tempted to go back and get some squid.
Yeah, no, you buy another one. No, I've never been
Your own
tempted.
Foley.
Yeah.
All right. Any episode or anything like that, sound design wise, what was a tough thing for you to do?
Cars are always really crazy because of how many layers that, like, even just driving in a car, for me at least, like, I will use 5 layers of car things of like an inside sound, a road sound, an outside sound, different engines. And with Squidbillies, early drives this giant truck, the truck boat truck, this giant, you know, monster truck looking thing, which has to sound badass, you know, but not drown out the voices. And so, God, some of that stuff can take much longer than it has any business taking to make car sounds. The neat thing about Squids, every episode, and 100 episodes in or whatever, every episode has some little weird thing that I could say, well, this was, you know, for whatever reason the dialogue editing was unique on this one, or weird cars on this one, or a lot of underwater. Everybody is talking underwater in this one. How am I going to do that? And
oh my gosh, wow, how did you do it?
That something like that, it would just be plugins. It would just be, you know, like,
I didn't know if you just had people gargling water in the studio while you recorded the sound.
That's a good idea. Where were you 4 years ago, bro?
I really like to talk about Doppler and just like all the different experiences, like with other people after I've been there. Sure. And I think one of the coolest things to bring up is like, oh, well, there's Shawn, and he does the Squidbillies, but he's also the guy behind, the voice behind Too Many Cooks. Actually, I want to read this on the IMDb for Too Many Cooks.
Oh, okay.
For those of you that don't know what Too Many Cooks is, a series of montages that parodies the introductory title sequences of generic 70s, 80s, and 90s TV shows of various genres slowly turns into an absurdist meta slasher, and then parody becomes even weirder. What does that mean? Well, you just gotta watch it and find out, okay? But keep watching this video and then go watch it. The idea just brought up in a recording session like, hey, we're doing this thing and you should do it, or what?
So there's another writer, a staff writer at Adult Swim who's also been there damn near as long as Dave Willis. His name is Chris Kelly. And this was his idea to do this thing. He's been like a staff dude there for forever. He worked on Stroker and Hoop, which was a show a bunch of years ago. And he does, you know, promos and just whatever Adult Swim needs him to do. And I think he had this idea to do this thing, and they have a slot, and I think they had aired a few of these before, where at 4 a.m., completely unannounced, they will put some super random weird thing on.
So crazy.
Yeah, and so obviously to unnerve super stoned people, like, it's 4 a.m. and you're what the hell?
Yes, that will do that.
Yeah, that is the goal, and that is what that's what the plan was. So he wrote this thing and brought it and asked me if I would work on the music, and so a year of diddling with it. So first of all, actually, we all sat down and listened to a bunch of old, sitcom themes and everything to try to find out what direction we wanted to go on this thing. And the initial plan on it was to have like 30 seconds or 40 seconds of a song loop the entire time for 11 minutes or whatever.
That would have been so bad.
Yeah, and that was immediately I'm like, dude, you're going to get so irritated from hearing this thing keep going over and over.
I get the joke, but
yeah,
come on.
not in a funny way. Yeah, like and that. So I was like, man, I really feel like this needs to kind of like evolve with the picture, and then it becomes this weird, ride that you're on that that I think is going to be much more engaging than just the same like pounding you with the same 40 seconds of a song over and over again. So Michael Kohler wrote the main sort of Too Many Cooks, like the main sort of theme of the thing. And I did all the arrangement. I performed the whole thing. I played all the instruments, sang it. It's me and Cheryl Rogers, who was actually, was Cheryl Rogers at Doppler Studios when you were there? I don't know. She's Cheryl Rogers is a composer that works in town that, she's got a great sort of classic white mom voice that I was like, that's
perfect.
That's who I need right there. White mom, and she's an amazing singer and a like unbelievably talented, like super hip musician too. So she sang on it, and then I played all the instruments and sang the male part on the thing. And so, like I said, it was a year so we did an initial version of the tune, and there was only the first few minutes of the video before it really spun totally out of control. But even then, it was really crazy and really funny and weird. And I was like, wow, this is some out there stuff. After the first, 3 minutes or whatever of the thing, they went away, shot more video. We're continuing to edit, and the music and the video had to be so tied together that I would write something to video and then they would change the video, and all my hits from the music would be negated.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah,
that's the great thing about this job. You
Yeah.
do so much to the picture, and then they're like, "Hey, it turns out we moved a couple frames."
Yeah,
and you're like,
and with music especially, with like just sound effects, it doesn't really matter. But with music, it has a, like you can't just all of a sudden throw a 7/8 bar in there just to have it work. So. But in the end, it made it better, and it made the thing more cohesive. And yeah, like I said, so it was roughly a year of working on this thing. In no way were we like, this is gonna kill the world, man. When this comes out, people are gonna lose it. Like, it was just a weird thing that at least in my mind, I was like, this is neat. I hope people watch it. I'm gonna look at Twitter that night and see, or the next morning and see if anybody said, whoa, But I was in no way like, I can't wait to see how this turns the world on, whatever.
Yeah.
So, and it did, man. It was crazy.
a full year of working on that project.
Now, it wasn't every single day for a year, but it was.
I get it, but
yeah.
the fact that you, from the emphasis of the idea and all that stuff, and then you have to go back, do reiterations and all that stuff. The fact that it went out, and then to put so much weight on a project working so long, and then release it at 4 a.m.
Yes.
That's so Adult Swim.
Yeah.
That's like
no fanfare at all. I mean, it was like literally no fanfare. It was like just they put it on. God. When it blew up, somebody had and Twitter had a little bit of mention. And first of all, I was bummed in the beginning because things called Too Many Cooks, which you Google search Too Many Cooks, and it's an idiom or whatever. It's like they're not going to be specific.
Not anymore.
Yeah, seriously. So at that time, I'm looking on Twitter for Too Many Cooks, and there's just people using the idiom, and one or two like whoa things. But I was like, okay, we did it. One or two people checked it out. Done. And so then somebody uploaded it to the internet. It wasn't on YouTube or whatever at that time. And
That's crazy because in that time it just wasn't a thing. Like I'm assuming what year was that?
this is not terribly long ago. This is 2000. What was that? 12? Is that 14? It's probably 2014.
Regardless of the year. Okay, so then it would have been. It
was the YouTube era.
So it would have gone to YouTube regardless. So it was going to get there, and then it did happen.
Yeah. And then real fast, it like taste blogger type people were starting to tweet about it, and then famous people were starting to tweet about it and talk about it, and it was a pretty crazy I hope everyone gets to go viral at some point in their life. You too, Javier. Hope you get to go viral, huh? Because
Like and subscribe.
yeah, this button right here. 'Cause it's crazy, dude. It was a very weird experience because like Twitter, first of all, it trended on Twitter for like a long ass time. And I didn't care or know about trending on Twitter at that time. But now I see after the fact that things trend on Twitter for like a day or a few hours or a few minutes or whatever. This trend, like for a couple of weeks, I want to say, it was like one of the top 10 things on Twitter that people were talking about. And I could refresh my phone at any given time every minute and have 20 more people saying something about it. And it was a very bizarre experience, this thing that you work on in a cave to have it released to the world. And I do plan, Squidbillies, I release it to the world every week and people will talk about it a little bit. There'll be a little bit of buzz, but it's nowhere near like the zeitgeist, weird thing that this thing became.
Yeah.
It was a bonkers experience.
What's crazy to me about that piece is there's a pacing. And in today's day and age of online media, it's like, you got to hook them first 5 seconds. Yeah. With that one, you're looking at a bald eagle in like the White House or whatever, or the Capitol building, and they just keep looping it. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, well, if you've already made it this far in the video, you're down the rabbit hole. But like even then, it's like you have to depend upon a couple people watching it. And those people have to be like in the room with the other people, like, no, but wait, watch it. Like, it hangs with it, and it's just crazy to me that the whole first, like, even like the first 4 minutes is still like, oh, you get it. It's like the intro. It's like Full House, and it's still like that. And then you get the killer guy in the background, and then like afterwards you see the whole thing, and then like by the time you get to the crazy parts, you're invested. Yeah. It's just crazy that something like that can hold people's attention, but it makes sense for the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot of it is luck, I think. You're right. Like keeping your attention and having just the right energy to that you don't go, okay, bro, I get it. And a lot of people did turn it off after the same thing repeating. I get it, bro. And which obviously with 40 seconds worth of the song, you hear that the third time the same 40-second song loops back, you'd be like, okay, I get it, very funny. But it's a testament to how Casper Kelly did the thing, man. It was pacing it and he was acutely aware of how to keep your attention and lose your attention and keep your attention again. It's like he was, it's amazing, man. It's like he did an incredible job with pacing the thing and keeping you in it.
So speaking of composition, that's not just the only composition that you've done. You've done stuff for Aqua Teen Hunger Force, I believe, and Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. Talk to me about that.
In high school, I was in sort of a joke punk band. I was never into punk. I was totally like a hair metal type of dude or whatever. But I was in a joke punk band called Black Lung, and we did sort of like...
Can you please send me a clip?
Yeah, without question. So all the songs were like either 4 or 5 seconds long or about
joke. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a lot of joke type of stuff. I have never been like a serious Elliott Smith kind of songwritery dude. Like I love music, but I just do not have the capacity to like funnel my true emotions into a song for whatever reason. Yeah. So I do like sarcastic, like joke. I've always liked joke music. I always liked Weird Al as a kid and that sort of being able to do that with music. And so Dave Willis, who was one of the Squidbillies creators, is also one of the, and Casper Kelly from Too Many Cooks are the two co-creators of Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. And so when they needed joke songs for their thing, they hollered at me, and I've gotten to do a Straight Outta Compton rip-off thing that was really fun and funny. And
Straight Outta Hades, crazy mother named Satan, hit your knees and start you filleting.
And a bunch of other just random, like parody sort of things for them.
It sounds like they have the idea. It's like, all right, well, let's do a parody song. Let's just call up Shawn.
Yeah, and that's great. It's perfect for them because they know I can make it funny and not I feel like I dance the line between it being a good song and it being funny. And hopefully, that's what I hope my sort of trademark on stuff is, that it's funny, but it's all, you're like, damn, but this is pretty good. I did for Squidbillies, I did a heavy metal. Like I said, I was very into hair metal as a kid. And there was an episode that was a Devil Went Down to Georgia sort of vibe that Rusty learns how to play guitar from the Devil. One of the jokes is that he can play power ballads too, and so they wanted him to play a power ballad.
There's probably this happy medium of, one, it's convenient that like, oh, this is the person that we work with, that we know, and then two, you have the skill set to do all that stuff, and then 3, there's in a working environment, you get to be creative, but then you also have a schedule of being able to do stuff.
Totally.
So, and you mentioned being able to do the business, or not the business, but tote the line of have it be like, all right, this is parody, but have it be a good song, but then like hit all those notes.
And then know how it's going to be used in a show, and make an underscore section because I know they're going to talk over it. So make a little section that's just instrumental because I know they're going to need that. And it helps being the re-recording mixer and the composer and all those things, knowing where you're going with the thing.
It's probably nice that you get to flex that creative muscle too.
Yeah, it's a gas, man, and it's fun. Yeah, that's the neat thing about this job is it's always different. It's a baby toy one day and a weird song the next day, and you never get boxed into one world. Although I will say in LA, like mixing TV shows and cartoons, like they do get boxed, and that's just the way the factory works there. People will be just the dialogue editor, just the Foley artist, just the Foley recordist, and man, that would make me crazy just to do that one thing all day. Like I had a buddy who was telling me, the Foley recordist is like, it's 2 mics in a room, and they sit there running the Pro Tools or whatever, and they mix those 2 mics together, and they do it in an artful way, and it sounds phenomenal and everything. But man, doing that one thing all day would be like, man, after 3 days of that, I'd be like, can we do the next thing now? Where's the baby toys?
Where's the baby toys?
Yeah, it'd be crazy.
Yeah, I think there's something to this world in the business sense that's different from the music world, where you have to meet the demands of the client. What I like is about the music that I hear from you is like, it's so simple in some respects of like, all right, here's a drum beat. And it's not like, all right, here's like over. It's like, all right, no, I got my kick, I have my snare, and then here's a basic beat, and then here's me singing, and then like we get to the point, and then if it's a jokey type of thing, like you hit the jokes and all that stuff, but you got the project done and it's there, and then like it complements whatever the piece is. Where I think what could get people held up is if they were hiring somebody else that like isn't familiar with trying to work with the whole visual aspect, is like, oh, I want to make this piece like this, and I want to be really creative, like I have this like violin thing, like just what you're talking about. It's great to have all of that high frequency material, but you can't do that while people are talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that is the dance of this whole thing, man, is time versus, I want detail, but Too Many Cooks is all detail. There's so many like rando detail things in there that sure, I could have just said, whatever, just keep, same 40 seconds or whatever, but you have to add things to keep the brain like playing, like the brain has to stay engaged with the stuff, but you also can't waste a ton of hours finding just the right kick drum sound for 2.5 hours, because they need this thing at the end of the day. And so there's always that balance of, okay, I've spent enough time on this. I've got to, this kick drum is going to have to work for now. Let me keep moving around, do another thing until this sounds more like a thing. And then if the kick drum's still a problem in 4 hours from now, then we'll work on it. But until then, but probably I won't care or know at that point. It'll just be so gelled into the whole thing that, it's fine, All
right, so for the Go Noodle stuff, it's just as catchy as like the Too Many Cooks in like the lunch. Like, hello. Is that you singing for
Yes,
the hello?
that is me.
Yeah. I heard it. I was just like, this is a different voice for Shawn.
Yeah.
But that's definitely got to be Shawn.
Yeah.
How did it happen? Like this just like the randomness of doing something like Too Many Cooks, and then like something like that is like, that's what this job is.
Yes,
it's so crazy.
Totally. So another weird tie-in from Too Many Cooks, Casper Kelly. Got a call from those
Same guy?
people. Yeah, totally.
Same guy.
Yeah, I know. See, man? See?
Like, God. These are the people that are puppeteering the life and times. Yeah.
That he got a call from them to do lyrics for them on just, they wanted to do some silly songs and to do, and I don't know if they knew about Too Many Cooks or what the deal was, but they just asked him to write some lyrics or whatever. And so he hollered at me to work on the musical aspect of things. And so they just, the main purpose, so Go Noodle is an educational-ish website. And I say ish because it's not straight up and down like 2 + 2 is 4. 2 + 2 is
It sounds like a song that is already being made right now.
I think that might exist. Actually, that might be a Simpsons thing.
Except you're in 1984 and it's 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Dark. So yes, it's a semi-educational thing. So the purpose of the songs are, it's interesting to me because the songs are like tools. They do a certain thing as opposed to just entertaining kids or teaching them 2 + 2 is 4. It's supposed to segue them from one moment in their day to the next. And I have 2 children, and you have children as well. Yep. And so now we know that breaks in the school day are extremely valuable, and like I think there was an era where they thought, well, these kids have got to be churning tests all day and take away recess and just like academia every moment of the day. Well, I have children, and I know that 7 hours in a row of testing and learning is not going to stick. It's not and they're going to spaz out, and they need to move around. They need breaks from that stuff. And so that's what the Go Noodle stuff typically is. It is either breaks between things so you can get up and wiggle it out and move around or whatever the heck, or it's a segue from one thing to the next. Because as you may know, with kids, especially with a toddler or whatever, segues can be real gnarly for kids, where it's like, okay, now put your shoes on, we're going outside, we're doing another thing, and you got to wait 40 minutes for them to feel like doing that or whatever. So there's a song about going to lunch. There's a song about quieting down that we did. That's like, like if everybody's spazzing out, okay, I'm gonna read you a quiet story. The teacher can put on this song that is a tool that is like starts loud and it's crazy, and then slowly very, brings the whole room down, and then it's all just wispy and quiety, and hopefully the kids will sort of pantomime along with it or whatever, and it can bring everybody's crazy wiggly energy down to like a smaller energy. The lunch thing too is just supposed to be like something that teachers can fire, if you're teaching or whatever and you're doing something, you could fire this song on as the segue to lunch, and everybody knows to get in line at the end and head off to lunch or whatever. So it's a really neat, and for all of the evil that I do with in audio, it was fun. It was fun to have something that I knew was a positive thing that little kids were going to get down with, and especially when you have kids, it's like, finally something I can play for my kids. It's supposed to be like, don't look at the screen.
You can listen to the song, but don't look at the screen. Yeah.
So, it was a really neat experience. So I got to do some character voice things, because I do a little bit of voiceover too. So I got to do some character voice, wacky, what people think of when they think of cartoon character voices, like weirdo voices, and some songs for them. And it was, a really, really, really cool experience.
Speaking of character voices, let's talk about the interaction between you as an engineer and the talent. How is that? How would you describe, especially for something like comedy? How would so in this room here, there's like the producer, there's you, and then the talent. How's that interaction, and how would you describe how to act when you're trying to get the material that you need from somebody?
So I live in this room, and I will do anything on a microphone. I have no, I'm going to look dumb, or they're not going to like this. Like, I know to just go for it and, put it on tape and see later on if it's going to be funny or good or whatever, but you got to go for it. You can't kind of yell. If it requires yelling, you got to for real yell. And so I know that, and I try to create an environment where the talent feels safe, that they can be dumb and look a fool, in order to get a performance that I know in the end they're not going to be like, oh, I feel dumb. It was the right thing. It was what you needed to do comedically. And so, just making sure they're comfortable. Certainly levels are correct, and not barging in and micromanaging every aspect of their performance, letting them just do a thing and laying back, not line reading everything, but sometimes line reading if line reading is a weird thing that people can be very careful about. I've worked with some people that will never line read, and they'll spend 15 minutes trying to get somebody to shape something away and I'm just like, bro, line read them, man. Like, say it, and then they'll say it. Like, we've done this for a couple minutes now, do it. And they're getting frustrated. They're like, I don't know what the fuck they want. Line read them.
I think that's so it's not just in this atmosphere, but going and doing stuff on camera and filming things nowadays is different. I understood the demographic or the interaction between like a producer and a talent, and in terms of the line reading and stuff like that. That was one of the first things that I caught on to, is like, oh, they're not like saying anything verbatim. They're like, all right, they're just trying to direct them into this line that they want them to get.
Sometimes that's exactly the right thing, and sometimes it's exactly the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, especially, so there's like two types of things that could go on. One, the talent could be in the studio. And then two, they could be over a phone line or a Tele-Zephyr ISDN. Man, I haven't said ISDN for a really long time.
That feels good.
So an ISDN, which is just a high quality, like, I don't know,
Skype call.
Yeah, it's like a FaceTime, but you don't see their face, and you get the good audio. Anyhow, when they're talking to the talent, I wouldn't have known what a producer does, but I would say a lot of it is just this. It's not puppeteering, but it's like they have to get this idea that even if they didn't write the material, they have to get this idea that's for the show or the project or whatever out of the person that's acting. And there's this like teamwork that goes on between the engineer and the producer. Like engineer kind of in some respects acts as a producer sometimes when it's like, all right, you hit your plosives. Can you stand back and all that? Or with your read, can you not do this from this whatever, like say it this way for a technical aspect, but then it kind of starts segueing into the producer role if like the producer's trying to get them not to line read, and then you're like, all right, well, you know some way of describing it another way, and then you can get them to say it. That's another thing that happens where if a producer comes in and they're like, oh man, the engineer just made my job so much easier because they told them to do this, and then the person did it, and then we were done with the session. Like that was it, and then they were fast at their job and all that stuff. It's crazy, those kind of things that you can't really teach, but those are the things that like that
you got to
get
be
the
here
job.
to learn that stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like being in the room and for every new producer that I work with, figuring out like some roll in and literally want me to talk to the talent and do all of that stuff, and they just sit in the back and just will chime in if there's something wrong or whatever. And some want to totally either feel like or actually be in charge. Feel like sometimes I have to kind of like, dance both dances of like making them feel like they're doing everything, but I'm doing a little bit of stuff and figuring that out for every single person. But it's not hard. It's just, like you get the vibe right away of like, this is a type A person that really wants to be like, hello, I'm here. Hello, engineer. Okay, let's, and I'm like, okay, I'm just the engineer. Here we go. Red button. And until I'm needed for something, and then I might chime in, and then I'll get a compliment at the end. It's nice to have an engineer who cares about the project and was willing to chime in like that. And it's like, yeah, well, if I chimed in the beginning, you'd be like, well, this is my project, bro. Why are you trying to, so is, figuring out that dance is interesting,
He says it's not hard, but trust me, it's like, he's been doing it for so long. There's definitely like, if you're new, and especially when I switched over from being an intern and doing full-time stuff, there's especially like when you're doing the nighttime gigs and at Doppler. So during the day at Doppler there would be the normal corporate type of stuff, and then at night there would be the music gigs, and those would be your very cliche Atlanta rappers like 2 Chainz's, P. Diddy's coming in and doing like random things like Ludacris's and whatnot. And during those types of things, like you have to know to do the setup, and then there's this whole like interaction where you don't want to kill the vibe. Like, bitch, don't kill my vibe. I sometimes when I hear that song, I'm like, oh man, I wonder if Kendrick Lamar was just like, hey, I had this thing going, and then some engineer effed it up, or some other person was like doing something, and he's like, you know what? Thank you. You killed my vibe, but now I'm gonna make a song about it.
Right? Listen to my art.
Yeah. So I think that's in terms of this kind of job, you have to, or anything in this kind of creative field, you have to understand the relationship between you and the producer and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship with a producer or just like networking in general? Like, so for me, what it sounds like from your story, the butterfly effect of your one conversation that you had out in the hallway had eons to do with whatever happened in the rest of your life.
It totally did, yeah. I tell people, be eager but not too eager, and that's the weird dance of, just being around here. You can, be the most eager, like, come on, let me work on your thing, man, and the person's like, oh, okay, we'll see, bro. You seem more like a fan and less like a peer. Finding that weird dance where you're just like, hey, I want to work with you. I'm not aloof, but I don't, just finding that perfect dance of things is a learned trait, or maybe some people have it inherently or whatever. But man, it's just like, yeah, figuring out exactly the intensity that you need for me to get your project is just from reading you, and just like, is this a guy that wants somebody that's like, man, what a high energy, crazy, spazzy guy. I love that. Or wow, that high energy, crazy, spazzy shit is like not cool. I don't like that. So it's, who knows? Figuring that out gig to gig. And I also don't feel like I'm being a fake person per se when I'm like, toning down my energy or what have you in order for a session. That's what the room needed for this particular thing, and that's part of this gig is either being invisible and just pressing the record button to get the right thing, or being silly or whatever in order to coax the performance out of somebody because they felt shy, and like trying to figure out what tone you got to set in order to to turn the thing into a thing.
in terms of like talking to people and things like that, it's weird. It's that timing and all that other stuff. But I think in my experience, especially just people that I meet, not just in this field, but just like anywhere, if you see that they have that drive, I would say their effort or their mind is in the right place. So they're coming from a good place, and it's not like what you're talking about, like fanboydom. It's like, oh no, if you're putting forth a conscious effort all the time to be doing all the stuff, and then like somebody sees it, like the success is going to follow. I feel like, and I think that's getting back to the whole college education and all that stuff.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, it's really awesome to get the theoretical and all that stuff, but if you have that drive, there's one thing to be said if you have that education and then you come in and you're like, oh, I just want to have the 9 to 5, but then there's like the other people that are young and they're hungry, they're thirsty for that stuff, which there's a lot of people there, but if you put that effort in the right places, like eventually people will notice. And if you're not working here, then in today's day and age, it's like, all right, well, you do your own thing. I have like whatever random cameras here. I'm YouTubing this, you know? It's like, it's random stuff.
And I think, man, that's the way to succeed in this modern era, is to find some niche thing, either create it yourself or work for, like for sound, for example. Some company, like a chicken company needs somebody in-house that they record their own internal podcast or whatever. And like there's an unbelievable amount of untapped. Now, finding them is near impossible. You have to stumble into them and be in the right coffee shop and be in the right place at the right time to get the things. But there is a job waiting out there right now for somebody with exactly the parameters you want, as far as mixing something at home, like just the right hours and all this other stuff. It's just connecting those two things, and it's not necessarily on LinkedIn or on whatever. It's just like being in the right place at the right time. So finding those things, I don't know how to find them, but the jobs do exist out there and don't necessarily require a college education or a full sail 2-year education or whatever.
And I think also part of it too is once people around you see what you're doing, the dots start to connect. It's like, oh, hey, like Javier's over there doing that, or like obviously anybody in your family is probably like, oh, I needed like, I don't know, a trumpet thingamajiggy, or I needed like this bass thing, and then like a couple months out from the family reunion, like, oh, Shawn does that stuff, and so it's just one of those things where it starts to just fall into place, and other people around your community start to be like, oh, hey, I know the guy that knows the guy that does that thing. We should introduce you to that thing, and then that leads to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. It's crazy how that works. Yeah. One of the things before I cap it off is who is somebody that you've worked with that like has really stuck with you, like just like either one time or just like you met them and you're just like, man, this is really cool to get to work with.
So Doppler Studios, we worked at together. There was a guy, Joe Neal, that we worked with together, who recently passed away and was an amazing, huge influence. I don't know, probably on you technically, and and huge influence on me technically.
You just have to meet Joe. So to give you the gravitas of Joe Neal, I went to my next job, and then anywhere I went, when I would walk in a room, and if something was broken, and we were problem solving it, and I walked in, and it was something that I was specialized, like, oh, I know how to fix this, and then if they called me, and they're like, Javier, can you come fix this? And I walked in, and then it worked. Yeah. I called it the Joe Neal effect.
Yeah, totally. And he would just intimidate gear, and it would work. Yes.
Yeah. So now, even at the Chive, when I'm working, other employees will be like, it's the Joe Neal effect. And it's crazy. It's like Joe Neal's never even met or done anything with that, but it's just like this web that's like gone out into the community. Yeah. But
talk about a solid, like somebody that knows totally what they're doing. He was a tech and the person in charge of computers and all this stuff at Doppler Studios, and also recorded a bunch of gospel stuff. That he worked with, had a tape truck that he went out and recorded stuff remotely. Just a very, very solid, kind, like knew everything, was
a wizard.
Yeah, like the true wizard. When people have joked and called me an audio wizard before.
He's built preamp. I'm just
do it.
This camera. So he's built preamps like these. It's one thing to be like, oh, I bought a preamp from Universal Audio. No, he has these. Like that's just what he does on his free time.
Yes, it's for leisure.
Yeah.
For leisure. But and he has spoiled me for every like tech person since then. Like since I came here, like no one can touch like how great he was as far as repairs and taking care of things and vibe and so and so I rewired my room a few months back, like just to incorporate gear like my Joe Neal preamps and all this other stuff. And every step of the way, I'm like, well, how would Joe do this? Like, what's the smart way to do this? And it will influence all of my technical decisions from now on, as far as the smart way, the Joe Neal way to do things. Yeah.
I think one of the cool things, I remember having a conversation with you once, and we had a discussion about video gear and the quality of it. And you were talking about, like, we were doing a juxtaposition between, like, all right, every single year, like, even with cell phones, like the camera on the cell phone 2 years ago was like not as good as the cell phones that you have now. But with audio gear, it's like, nope, you're recording it is like, it's always going to be 48 hertz, it's going to be 44.1. And like right now, all of the mediums that you're recording on, it's like, all right, so just between Pro Tools and what is this? Fairlight. It's the same concept of like, you're still moving around the sound blobs. I love that. I'm going to use that from now on. The sound blobs. But if you learn the concepts of audio, it's like, sure, there's going to be new speaker, there's going to be new like microphone and all that stuff. But you learn the concepts of the audio, then you're basically set.
Yeah.
Whereas with video, it's like there's a new gadget, new gizmo. Like right now, you're recording into a lav that's going into a cell phone, which is nice, but it's like there's also all these other cameras and all this other, like this thing goes into here, like, and from now on it's like, all right, I would love for a different device that goes into a cell phone so I can just record it and then like have a Bluetooth audio into a cell phone and all that stuff. But if you learn the concepts, it's there. And with Joe Neal, it was like he could what was the thing before Pro Tools? The
Waveframe.
Waveframe. So he could bring up a waveframe session on our SSL board and be like, oh, no, it's like this. Or he could bring up a tape session, or he could bring up a Pro Tools session. He could bring up anything, and then it could be there. Or something could break down, and he had the mind and skill set that was like, you got to look past the technology or the newness of it. And it's like, no, you're looking at a compressor. And then he would literally open it up, and he would solder something, and you'd be like, oh, no, you do this with it. And it's like, it's crazy because, like, you meet somebody like that, and you're like, oh, these are, like, when you think audio engineer, literally he's got the oh, I'm recording it, but no, he's sitting and you see smoke coming from the things that he's soldering, and he's making patch bays and all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And just doing it, like I said, in the most logical. You could wire something up and then have it be upside down or whatever. You're like, oh damn, I should have done this first. And so everything that I do, I try to think about it in advance. And actually, I made very few mistakes in here. I was very proud of myself. And I actually took photos. There was one thing, like when you're running long amounts of cable, they come on a big spool or whatever. And total Joe Neal move with I got like a milk crate and a broom through the spool, so the spool can sit in this milk crate, and you can just pull the cable out, and the spool would turn. And I'm photoing it. I'm like, this is a Joe Neal move and a half right here, man. This is like, even little, something that I would have taken hours of unspooling this thing, it's amazing how much he, technically and vibe-wise, he's had a huge influence on me.
The Joe Neal effect.
Yes, totally.
If there was any advice that you could give to somebody coming up, I know we've talked about it a little bit, just somebody that's watching this that like wants to get into audio engineering, what would you tell them?
One thing is finish things. That's one thing that I've been thinking about while we've been sitting here. Everybody can start something. Oh, I got a great idea. And you start, man, finish it. You know what I mean? Like, get it to be a packaged thing that you could have at the end. A million started songs is nothing, man. Like, if you have at least and because things need to get done. If it's going to show up on TV, if it's going to show up on the internet or whatever, it has to be done. You can't be I had a great idea, it has, So seeing a project all the way through, and when people see that you see projects all the way through, then they hire you to do projects that they need to be finished, you know what I mean? And they recognize that if you're a flake and you're like, well, he's got a lot of neat ideas, he's a creative guy, but you don't finish things, then it's, so that's a huge thing, man. Like, finish the thing you're working on, you know what I mean? Like, stay with it. And the not too hot, not too cold vibe thing with people, like figuring out how to, like the exact right amount of eagerness, how many times, when to email, when not to email, to be, like.
It's so true. But that's in any business sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because just the email at the one, and it's all luck, dude. So I do voiceover too, and I'll do auditions for things. And fortunately, I'm in the exact right head about it, where I just do whatever I think is right and the best thing, and I send it off and forget about it. And actors, like hardcore actors that try to get this to work all the time, maybe will bug out on, "Well, I wonder if I should have done this," and just do your best. Cast it out into the world and move on to the next project, because it's, like, I have been in the room when they have picked voiceovers for things, and sometimes it's because you have a weird name, or it's sometimes you slated it in a peculiar way, and you'd be amazed why you do and do not get gigs. And it's for the microcosm of voiceover all the way up to any damn position, but especially in voiceover and in advertising, like, there's a lot of dumb reasons that you will get or lose a gig. That's just the way the waves are crashing and stuff, man. You just gotta, move on to the next thing, and it's just, it's just how it goes,
Yeah.
All right, guys, I hope you found that super helpful. I thought this was a great conversation.
I enjoyed myself.
Yeah, if you are interested in all the audio things, where can they find you at?
Right. I'm on Twitter. You can hit me on Twitter, Shawn Coleman, ShawnColeman on Twitter. Hit me up.
Be sure to like and subscribe, and if you like these kinds of interviews and things like that, every Wednesday I come out with my Interv Wednesday, interviewing people passionate about their craft. And I would hope by the end of this that you can tell how passionate Shawn is about audio and just sound design in general. So thank you so much, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.